Back about the time I was in elementary school, Egypt had a leader named Nasser. Nasser tried to unite the Arab world, and he changed the name of Egypt from Egypt to the to the United Arab Republic, or UAR. And some of your older maps, if you happen to see one, will show Egypt as listed as being the UAR, or United Arab Republic. Problem was, the Arab world could not unite. Nasser Nasser knew if he could unite the whole Arab world, they could wipe Israel off the map, among other things. The dream was not realized. Nasser fought a war against Israel in 1967 in which he lost badly. UAR, United Arab Republic. And Nasser, after the UAR broke up, Nasser continued to try to get the Arab world united. Again, all his efforts came to nothing. The united world just simply would not unite. Yeah, your book goes into some detail about the Six-Day War, the war that occurred just as I was getting out of high school. And being most Americans were all for Israel. Israel received a lot of help from the United States. All right. Eventually, President Jimmy Carter was able to get the president of Egypt and the Israeli president to sit down and work out a peace treaty called the Camp David Accords. This peace treaty lasted for 30 years. It recently appears to have broken down, with the government of Egypt having broken apart. For the Egyptian president, it cost him his life. The Egyptian president was assassinated a short time later for making the agreement with Israel. But nevertheless, the next president of Egypt observed the agreement. The agreement lasted for 40 years. Right now, Israel has no agreement with its neighbors. Every attempt at peace just seems to run into a brick wall. As for the Palestinians, they were attaching suicide bombs to some of the young people to get them to blow themselves up and blow up a lot of people with them. The Israelis responded by putting all the Palestinians inside fences, huge fences about 9 feet tall with big barricades. Now, they are allowed out, but every time they come out, they come under bomb detecting equipment and bomb sniffing dogs. And no bomb making equipment is allowed in. The Palestinians appealed to the World Court saying this is illegal. They won their case in the World Court, but Israel said that the World Court has no jurisdiction in this matter. It's not them who are being blown up, it's us. So the fences are still there. And the fencing of these Arab peoples has stopped the suicide bombings. At one time, they were only using young men as suicide bombers, then they started using young girls also, young women, who would go to a crowded marketplace and just blow themselves to smithereens, killing themselves and everybody else around them. The leader of the Palestinians for a long time was Yasser Arafat. The PLO, or Palestine Liberation Organization it's called, did a lot of terrorism. Practiced a lot of terrorism against Israel. They still do. What's left of the PLO will shoot rockets regularly into Israeli territory. And the Israelis can't shoot back because the PLO always has a bunch of young children standing right around the rockets, to where the Israelis can't hit the rocket launchers without hitting some small child. I had a student ask me just Thursday in her class, do our troops ever kill civilians? I had to answer yes. Again, I tried to explain, it sounds naughty, it sounds nasty, it sounds mean, but you cannot fight a war without killing innocent people. It simply cannot be done. But the Jews know they're going to be condemned soundly if they kill small children, so they'll even allow rockets to be shot at them. And won't retaliate, because retaliation could bring the whole world down on them. Now, the United States' support for Israel has cooled greatly in recent years, but Israel continues to survive because the Arabs are too busy fighting themselves. Again, the problem is unresolved, and it's still going on, very much relevant to our time. All right. I think nobody else is looking. Moving on to Iran. The United States supported the Shah of Iran throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s. There are actually two different Shahs, a father and son, but the United States kept them in power. And this has made the people of Iran hate us, because these Shahs engaged in torture. And also they were very, you might say, unreligious. And these people wanted, what the Shah of Iran tried to do was set up a secular state like Turkey and adopt Western styles. But Iran was the best friend the United States had in the Middle East for a long time. Then in 1979, the people of Iran rebelled against the Shah. The Shah at this time was very ill and suffered from cancer. The Shah fled the country, and Ayatollah Khomeini took over. Again, your book says that the Shah was doing a good job of improving the economy of the people, getting the farmers to get more land. He did hand about, several hundred farmers at a time, he'd hand deeds of land to. And the economy was improving, but nevertheless, the people did not like him, and he did engage in torture. Ayatollah Khomeini took over. Khomeini was a Shiite. Now, of the two factions, the Shiite are the most radical, the ones that hate America the most. The other side are the Sunnis. They're more moderate. Anyway, the Shiite faction of the Muslims took over Iran in 1979, and Iran has been a bitter enemy of the United States ever since. They refer to the United States as the Great Satan, and Israel as the Little Satan. And they hate the United States, for one thing, for supporting the Shah, and for another, for supporting Israel. And they claim that our foreign policy is right in their face. And now, I'm going to be coming back to Iran. Before I do, I want to get to Iraq, the neighbor of Iran. Iraq was led for many years by Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein took over and ruled Iraq with a very firm hand. In the process of ruling, he killed more than 1 million people. Folk almost all of them were Muslim. He didn't go after Christians and didn't go after Jews. He just went after dissenting, again, mostly Muslim. He even had a Christian high up in his cabinet. But he killed 1 million of his own people. In 1990, I guess about the time some of you were being born, he invaded Kuwait and took Kuwait, but the whole world turned against him. The United States led a coalition that drove him out of Kuwait and returned Kuwait back to the control of its own people. He went on. Now, before invading Kuwait, he had invaded Iran. And the Ayatollah would not quit fighting. Once he'd invaded Iran, the war went on and on and on and on. Finally, Ayatollah Khomeini died, and eventually a truce was arranged. But basically, when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, he found out he'd invaded an enemy that he could not defeat. Well, President Henry Kissinger Our former Secretary of State, when the fighting started, said, too bad only one side could lose this war. He was slightly wrong. Both sides lost the war. Nobody won. But anyway, Iran and Iraq engaged in a war. Then Iraq invaded Kuwait because Kuwait had a lot of oil. The United States went in and took Kuwait back. Saddam Hussein went on for a while, and finally, when the United States was attacked in 2001, the United States first went to war in Afghanistan, then the United States moved against Iraq. And the first thing we did was take out Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was tried and executed by his own people, tried for crimes and executed. His crime was, of course, they picked a few people he killed and said these deaths were illegal because he had not followed procedure. Now, a big issue, and you'll hear this from time to time, the United States went to war in Iraq on the grounds that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, some of them called WMDs. We got over there, folk, and we found no WMDs. And President Bush said, oh, when I realized there weren't any WMDs, I was very upset. All right, I want to comment on that. We found the mass graves of more than 1 million people Saddam Hussein had killed. When we dug some of them up, we determined some of them had been killed by gassing. Where went the gas? Indicating he once had weapons of mass destruction. He once had gas. What happened to the gas? Well, very recently, like a year ago, it was found the president of Syria was using gas against his own people. Where did the Syrian president get the gas? I mean, I'm not saying I know, we don't know. But I've had students tell me that President Bush is a criminal. He went to war against a man for no reason. But to me, he did have a reason for going to war. Saddam Hussein was supporting terrorism worldwide. Every time a Palestinian terrorist blew himself up, Saddam Hussein gave the family $25,000. To me, that's grounds for war. Now, I got into an argument with someone very close to me one time, and this person was saying, President Bush should be tried as a criminal and put in jail. He went to a war, he didn't have to, he got Americans killed. I said, if he had had 1,000 reasons for going to war, and 999 of them proved to be untrue, he still would have had one reason to go to war. What was his reason for going to war? Saddam Hussein was supporting terrorism worldwide. Now, if that's not a reason for war, I don't know what is. All right, now I'll be quiet. Any of you have any comment? I mean, the other class, I mean, when I say this tomorrow, I might get a comment because one student is really, really upset. He said that we had no reason to go to war in Iraq. Well, the man was supporting terrorism. And as far as the weapons matter, he apparently had them. He used them on his own people. What happened to him? I don't know this, but I think they found a way into Syria. Where did he get them? I suspect they came from Russia. Now again, I can't prove any of this. All right, any one of you have any opinions on it? Any comments? I know by tomorrow's class will probably have some strong opinions. I mean, if you're going to disagree with what I've said, I won't argue. I mean, you can say your piece, or maybe you've never thought of it. This is still an issue. I mean, we went to war with a man on the grounds he had WMDs. We got there and found no WMDs. How did he kill millions of his people? About 1 million of his people. Rush Limbaugh put it this way: Saddam Hussein, was the weapon of mass destruction. Now, I've had students argue, maybe Muslim students now, argue that the fact that he killed 1 million of his own people was his own business and we had no right to say anything to him about it. This reminds me of the argument that they used with Nazi Germany during the Nuremberg trials. The defense said that any nation can do anything it wants to its own people, and what's an outside nation got any right to say anything against it? In other words, if Germany wanted to kill 15 million of its own citizens by torturing and gassing them to death, who was an outsider to say, basically there was no such thing as human rights. No outsider had any right to say anything against it. So basically Saddam Hussein, by the same logic, wanted to kill a million of his own people. Who's to say anything against it? Personally, I think somebody should say something against it. Because I said, what if they come after you next? The next person that come after could be me. I hope somebody will say something against it.